Hey everyone! So on this week's episode, I figured I'd do things a little bit differently. I have noticed that the fidget spinner craze is going like crazy, no pun intended, and decided that I'm going to put my personal opinions aside about them and show you how I'd go about building one using a piece of scrap brass and an old bearing that I recovered, presumably from a VCR eons ago. So let me show you guys how I'd go about doing it if I was to do it. Okay, so obviously we have the piece of brass sitting here in the middle. I'm using Mighty Bite Talon grips to hold it in place. These things are pretty nice, although they aren't cheap. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna pretty much just mill the shape out. I've already done all the programming and all that stuff in Fusion 360. I will do a separate video about that as I have a little bit of problems taking the footage from OBS and editing it, but all that aside. What we're going to do first is we're going to drill some holes into this, and I'll explain why I did that at the end. Then we're going to come along with an end mill, and we are going to face the top down so it doesn't have that nasty bar look. We're going to come along and cut the profile, cut the middle, finish the model. Then what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over and machine the excess, the carrier that will be remaining on the bottom. And a little disclaimer, I'm not going to be using soft jaws for Op 2 strictly because I really don't feel like hacking up a pair for this project. If you don't like that, I will put my shipping address below and you can send me a pair of 4-inch aluminum soft jaws and I will use them in the future, but that's my little disclaimer. So let me reposition the camera and let's actually cut this thing out. Okay, drilling cycle is obviously done. Sorry if you can't really see it very well. What I've done is I've put holes around the edges and the center, and I'll explain why in a minute. Let me try repositioning the camera first. So we're going to be using an 1/8 inch end mill. I'm not exactly sure what this is. I believe it's a Destiny tool, but don't quote me on it. So what it's going to do is it's going to come along, it's going to do all the facing, it's going to do all the milling, it's going to do all the profiling. I know 1/8 of an inch tool isn't for this, I just didn't want to do a bunch of tool changes, and it's brass, so it's not like we're cutting anything nasty like stainless or titanium, so let's get cutting. Oh dang, totally screwed up the bearing pocket size. Crap. Okay, well that's really embarrassing that the bearing doesn't fit. No, that was not scripted or anything like that. Goes to show when you go to make something, always make sure you double check the dimensions. So I'm going to see what I can do about maybe making a press fit liner for this so I can get the bearing to fit in there, or just biting the bullet and measuring and cutting another piece of brass. But the other thing is, you can see though the carrier on the back here, which is this right here, the scrap material, that will end up getting milled off At a later time, what I would do is I would just set it up in some vice jaws like this, send the end mill back and forth, cut it to the right thickness, and call it done. Okay, so sorry about the fail, guys. Sorry about the mic audio not being the best in spots. Kind of realized it after the fact. But in short, what I'm going to do with the oversized bearing one is I'm just going to make an aluminum insert for it and put it in there and call it a two-tone. So, you know, making the best of a bad situation. Now, as for the one that actually turned out decent, it's not perfect. There's an edge that still shows signs of being saw cut right there. So I can't see it because of the glare. And there's the part that didn't get faced, but you know what? The whole point behind this was just to show a quick and dirty machining related video and then using the fidget spinner in it just because those are really popular. Now, one thing I didn't clear up in the video part earlier was what the holes are for. Now, you might be correct, you would be correct, my bad, in assuming that these are for inlays. Now, what I'm going to inlay in there, I'm not fully sure. I do have some 1/8 inch titanium rod. I also have some 3mm glow-in-the-dark filament. It's not super bright when it glows, but I might just put it in there for the effect. We'll see. If you guys have a preference of what you want to see put in there, please let me know in the comments down below, and whichever one has the most requests by the end of the week, I'll also probably do a Twitter poll as well, will be the one that I go about doing in the next video, which I'm probably going to be filming on Saturday. That said, if you guys did enjoy this and you feel led to, feel free to drop me a subscribe. I promise that I'm not totally going to be doing fidget spinners as machining projects. I just merely chose it because I thought it was cool. And I do have potentially a project involving 2-inch grade 5 titanium on my milling machine, building a spinner, if that all works out. So fingers crossed on that. More details on that when it comes out. Also, if you guys are potentially interested in buying these, granted they work, if there's enough interest in them, I would consider doing it. Only disclaimer is they'd have to be at least $10 to $12 a piece to make it worth my time to machine them, as they are a little bit time intensive, but it's something that if there was enough demand, I would consider doing. So, hope you guys enjoyed this, and see you next time here on Make It with Calvin.